The North American Trade War, why it's happening and how it affects you. Every time you fill up your tank or you buy groceries, you're paying a hidden tax. And no, I'm not talking about inflation. I'm talking about the ongoing trade war between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. For years, our parents and our grandparents led us to believe that companies packed up and left town for cheaper labor overseas. That factories in the Midwest shut down because Mexico and China simply undercut wages. But that's really only half the story. The real reason? Comparative advantage. You see, in economics, countries specialize in industries where they have an edge. Mexico became the world's factory for cars and electronics because labor was cheaper and because NAFTA allowed companies to import goods back into the United States tariff-free. Canada locked in as its role as an energy giant and an agricultural exporter. In the United States, we focused on high-value industries such as tech, finance, and pharmaceuticals. But now, the rules are changing. The United States is fighting to reclaim lost industries, Mexico is pushing back, and Canada is trying to flex despite being economically handcuffed to the United States. And all this is directly affecting how much you pay for everyday goods. So let's break this down. Number one, how the trade war started. It's just not about tariffs. Number two, who's winning and who's losing, where the jobs are really going. Number three, how it affects your wallet, the cost of cars, food, and electronics. And number four, why I support tariffs despite the short-term pain. Number one, let's get into it. How we got here. We just got here through a big history of bad deals. For decades, trade agreements shaped the United States American economy. The North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, signed in 1994 by Bill Clinton, was meant to increase trade and economic integration between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. But what it really did was it allowed corporations to chase lower production costs without penalty. The United States manufacturing jobs collapsed as companies relocated for cheaper labor. I mean, that's literally what happened with KBI turned Delphi, turned New Departure. Now it's a friggin' Amazon warehouse. And Canada maintained a stable role in energy and agriculture. In theory, this aligns with David Ricardo's model of comparative advantage. Each country should specialize where they're most efficient. But in practice, it gutted American towns, leaving behind hollowed-out industries. Fast forward to 2020, and NAFTA gets replaced with the much mightier, yet still kind of flimsy, United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. This was supposed to level the playing field by enforcing stricter labor laws, increasing regional content requirements for auto manufacturing, and forcing Mexico to raise wages. It sounds great, right? Well, now we're seeing the real fight begin. The United States is imposing tariffs to protect American industries. Mexico is retaliating, and Canada is kind of taking things personally. Who's winning and who's losing? All right, so we got the United States auto industry. It's pretty much just a huge tug of war. The United States wants higher wages in Mexico to stop unfair labor competition. Mexico is resisting because its entire manufacturing sector relies on cheap labor, and Canada is heavily invested in EV production to stay relevant. I mean, isn't it kind of crazy though that we push so hard for electric vehicles, yet nobody purchased any Dodge electric vehicles, any Ford electric vehicles. The only EVs I see going around are Teslas. Economically, this is a classic case of the factor price equalization theorem. If two regions trade freely, wages will naturally converge over time. The United States is forcing Mexico's wages up through policy intervention, and companies are now looking to shift even further south to places like Brazil and Vietnam. Go get them, President Trump. Now, we get to the harsh reality of regulatory tariffs. Now, Justin Trudeau has responded to the United States tariffs with a 25% tariffs on American goods. Sounds like a tough stance, right? Here's a problem. 77% of Canada's exports go to the U.S. 84% of Mexico's exports go to the U.S. Both of these countries rely heavily on the United States economy to survive. They can throw tariffs at us, but if we stop buying from them, they have nowhere else to turn. The United States, on the other hand, we could afford to absorb some of these losses. That's why these retaliatory tariffs are more of a political move than a real economic threat. Now, let's talk numbers. According to the 2022 World Bank's data, the United States GDP was approximately 25.44 trillion. Canada had a GDP of 2.16 trillion. I think our COVID bill was worth more than that. And Mexico's was approximately 1.47 trillion. Those are really large numbers to shake a figure at, but I mean, you put Mexico and Canada's GDPs together, they're not even close to a quarter of the might of the United States. These figures highlight the vast economic disparity. The United States' economy is over 10 times larger than Canada's and more than 17 times larger than Mexico's. This immense economic power means that the United States has a significant advantage in this trade war. While tariffs and counter tariffs can cause slight disruptions, the United States economy is better positioned to withstand these shocks compared to its neighbor countries. Now, how this trade war affects you. Let's get personal. How does this actually hit your wallet? New cars that are $2,000 more expensive because the tariff on Mexican auto parts will drive up costs. Groceries are climbing because food imports from Mexico are taxed higher. And electronics are going to cost more because Mexico is a major supplier of televisions, appliances, and tech components. In simple terms, the United States is making foreign goods more expensive to push domestic production. The goal is to strengthen American industry, but the side effect is that you pay more in the short term. So let's get into why I support the tariffs. Despite higher prices in the short term, I support the tariffs because tariffs encourage domestic production. Companies won't keep outsourcing if it's no longer profitable, and we're already seeing the reshoring efforts, United States jobs returning to the United States because manufacturing abroad isn't as cheap anymore. Tariffs also protect long-term economic stability. If we let other countries undercut our industries, we'll never build a strong workforce. This isn't just about prices, it's about economic security and independence. Now, the trade war between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada isn't just a headline or a political talking point. It's an economic earthquake with wide-reaching consequences. Tariffs, which were implemented in response to the escalating tensions, have far-reaching effects that extended to every corner of the economy. But why does it matter, and how do these tariffs affect the U.S. directly? Let's break it down. In recent years, we've witnessed an increasingly aggressive approach from the U.S. government regarding trade, particularly when it comes to tariffs. These tariffs, in response to various trade imbalances and unfair practices, are designed to protect U.S. industries and send a message to foreign companies. But here's the kicker. While tariffs might seem like a simple solution, they have a cascading effect on consumer prices and the broader economy. We've seen tariffs on steel, aluminum, and various consumer goods. These tariffs don't just hurt international trade partners, they affect us, the everyday consumers. Why? Because the price of the goods we buy, from electronics to groceries, increases as tariffs make their way down the supply chain. That $1,000 laptop, it's now going to cost you more. The car you've been eyeing, once again, it's going to cost a little extra. But tariffs aren't just a punitive measure, they're a bargaining tool. Take Canada's recent response, which was a direct reaction to the United States tariffs. Canada imposed, once again, a 25% tariff on U.S. exports. That's a pretty hefty counterattack, reflecting on how interwoven these economies are. That requires a deeper look into the systemic issues. The United States government and Wall Street's focus over the years has shifted drastically towards industries like that. And quite frankly, they don't add much tangible value to our lives and have decreased our dependence on countries like Mexico or China. So let's explore the industries that have been prioritized in the United States economy and why they aren't what they've been cracked up to be. The tech industry, innovation or exploitation. Let's start with the tech industry. Tech industries like Apple and Google have been lauded for innovation, but let's take a closer value at what they're really providing. Despite being some of the wealthiest companies on the planet, many tech products, like software and apps, don't create a utility for the average person. These software products often offer limited practical value, and we're left with a whole ecosystem of apps that aim to keep us hooked for as long as possible without truly improving our day-to-day lives. And I'm talking to all you motherfuckers online that be talking about take away OnlyFans, take away social media, take away TikTok, Yeah, I mean, I'm saying this part specifically for you. You're right, dumbass. Moreover, a lot of the tech hardware, including smartphones and computers, is manufactured in Mexico and Canada. These foreign supply chains make us more reliant on other countries for the production for them, for even our most basic tech tools like, drills, pumps, the headlights in your car. I'm talking about specifically the bulbs. Further complicating the economic landscape. We depend on these countries in ways that have been largely overlooked. Then there's the pharmaceutical industry. In the United States, medications are often priced several times higher than they are in Mexico or Canada. Why is it something as basic as healthcare is turned into an industry that thrives on profit maximization at the expense of its citizens? It's a system where the cost of life-saving drugs are inflated for Americans, while Canadian and Mexican customers get to pay a fraction of the price. This glaring price discrepancy is an outlier, it's a rule. And the cost of healthcare in the United States has skyrocketed. Free Luigi Maggioni. In part due to astronomical prices, which we're paying for a system that benefits big pharma. This is yet another way we've seen the system working against customers while relying heavily on foreign exports and labor. The finance industry is a miasma of greed, speculation, and it 100% misses the point of capitalism. Now, as someone who's a part of the finance industry, I cannot leave this out of the conversation. Finance, in its purest sense, should be allocating its resources efficiently and allowing innovation. But let's be real, it's more often about speculation, quick profits, and, let's be honest, cheating. The finance industry has increasingly prioritized short-term profits at the expense of long-term growth. Speculation, rather than investing in innovation, has become the norm. You know what I mean? You want to buy a stock for $2 and then sell it and then try to get it pump up the numbers to $10 instead of just letting that shit grow and achieving value over time. In fact, finance is starting to resemble more of a casino than a marketplace that rewards genuine productivity. As David Graeber, an anthropologist, put it, as it turns out, we don't all have to pay our debts. Only some of us do. The financial system in the United States has perpetuated these systemic inequities where the burden of debt and economic collapse falls on the average person, while big corporations and investors get away with minimal risk. Ayn Rand, the famous philosopher and novelist, once argued that capitalism should reward value creation, not speculation. She said, "Capitalism is the only industry where wealth was not acquired by looting, but by production. Not by force, but by trade." But today, we have largely strayed away from this ideal. Tech companies rely on outsourced labor. Pharmaceutical companies exploit the United States specifically for profit. And finance is all about speculative gains rather than supporting actual productive value. In conclusion, reflecting on the trade war and the industries at the heart of it, it's clear that in the past, the United States has chosen to prioritize sectors that extracted wealth rather than create it. While tariffs aim to protect domestic industries, they also highlight the larger problem of an economy that's too reliant on sectors that either don't add tangible value, tech, exploit customers, pharma, or focus on short-term profits, finance. Ultimately, it's not just about the economics of tariffs. It's about rethinking the industries that drive our economy. Instead of relying on tech that offers limited practical value, pharmaceutical companies that overcharge, and a financial system built upon speculation, we need to focus on industries that create real value for everyday people. As we move forward, the hope is that policymakers and corporations alike will shift their priorities towards manufacturing, healthcare, and technological advancements that will improve lives. Only then will we have a productive and equitable economic system that benefits us all.